I'm Stephen Paul here with BMW Blog, and we've got the 2025 BMW M4 here. We drive it for about a week and tell you what it does great and what maybe could have been improved upon. Whether you're a longtime M customer or someone new to the brand or new to sports cars in general, there will be something for you to appreciate in this review. So before we even drive the car, there are a couple of changes for the 2025 BMW M4, including these fancy new headlights with a new LED lighting signature. The headlight profile is a little bit narrower too, so it's pretty distinguishable. This car also came equipped with some pretty interesting options, including carbon ceramic brakes, normally an $8,500 standalone option. I believe they're included in the $13,000 carbon package on this car. The 2025 BMW M4 also gets some changes in the back of the car. You can see LED taillights with laser technology lifted right off the M4 CS, as well as M4 Competition badging in silver instead of the black surrounds that the older vehicles have. Inside the 2025 BMW M4 doesn't change all that much. You can see the new steering wheel here with a flat bottom and a red 12 o'clock marker. Big iDrive display as always. And then of course, new vents down here, one of the bigger changes with new ambient lighting as well. So we are driving the 2025 BMW M4 Competition. This is a rear-wheel drive model. The xDrive all-wheel drive models receive a 20 horsepower increase that this car doesn't. But you don't really notice that while you're driving along. The car is super responsive. Throttle is great. Very actually easy to modulate in comfort mode. Right now I'm cruising along in sport. Feels like a sports car should, you know. While I'm sure those xDrive models do see the benefits in 0 to 60 times and even an at-speed acceleration, I'm not missing it, and I've driven the pre-LCI models pretty extensively. This car isn't automatic, of course. All competition models are. Doesn't feel any different from the pre-LCI in that respect. I wish this was a manual. The manual adds a real degree of specialness that the automatic does lose, despite it being, a radically better performer and obviously much more competent in daily driving situations. The added layer of engagement does make this feel like a much more special car when it has a manual transmission, but for the best performance, of course, you'll opt for the automatic. So one thing that did surprise me about the car immediately was how communicative the steering is. I grew up on a lot of the older M vehicles, like the E36, E46, and E92 M3s, and everything after the F80 chassis started feeling a little bit more numb than I would have liked to have felt. This car, not so much. Even compared to the last G80 chassis car I drove, which was a G80 pre-LCI M3, this car really gives you a great feel for the road. In sport mode is a really balanced performer. This car feels special on a back road. It's plenty comfortable to commute, even on the rougher roads in the tri-state area are not perfect. And the car stays composed, but definitely rattles you around a little bit, especially passengers may not be super receptive to how the car rides, but it does a good enough job when you consider that on a back road, it's very thrilling to drive. Brake pedal feel is also great. Again, in such the digital age that we live in, it is sometimes hard to find a car that will communicate well through the brake pedal. This car is not one of them. You can change from comfort to sport braking. I honestly haven't touched the setting because the brakes have left nothing to be desired for me. And again, that may be a product of these carbon ceramic rotors doing a lot of work. One of my biggest problems with this car is that the limits are extraordinarily high. Even for the last generation M3, were very, very hard to come even close to reaching in any sort of safe street driving. And even on the track, most drivers will run out of skill before the car runs out of capability. And that is very much still the same here. Dynamically, even just on the street where we're driving, 6 to 7 tenths at times, something like an E46 M3 or E92 M3 is going to feel a little bit more engaging because its limits are inherently lower. This car is, and it's kind of an overused cliche, it's almost clinical in its precision. And it makes it very hard to feel like you're driving on the ragged edge even when you're not. One improvement BMW has made, or maybe it's this car, is that Sport Plus mode no longer feels like complete overkill on the throttle response. It used to be very, very stabby. A little bit of input gets you a lot of go, and it was too much. In this car, Sport Plus is almost progressive. It's very, very predictable, very easy to modulate, which is good. I also, and this is something I've noticed since the F80 generation cars, is that with traction control disabled or in MDM mode, which is the halfway point in between on and off, throttle response seems to change. And I don't know if that's something that they've done intentionally or not, But I find that with MDM mode on, which is the in-between mode, especially for street driving, you have an almost perfect balanced throttle. Inputs are progressive. It almost feels telepathic. One other downside is that this car does feel big on smaller village roads and even twisty turns that, you famously would want to be taking your M car on. This car feels its size. It masks its weight well, but it's still dimensionally a bigger car, and that is not going to change. What a great one-car solution, It does everything so well, with minor asterisks. I mean, it is, again, proportionally just a bigger vehicle. It's pretty wide, but if you're looking to drive something every day, if you're retired and looking for a car that you can run errands in, but then also have a blast in the canyons, and then also hang out at car meets and Cars and Coffee, this is a perfect car for you. If you're a young professional that needs something to get you through your commute, this is a great car for that. But as a special occasion car at $100 and something thousand, I don't think it works. Finally, this car with a manual would be 10 times more engaging than it is with the automatic. I know people have said in the past that paddle shifters are a great compromise between daily drivability and the engagement that a manual offers. Frankly, they're full of The manual is going to make this car, and does make this car, I've driven a couple manual G80s, makes it almost feel exotic, to the point that you have the anachronistic juxtaposition of shifting your own gears, but with this modern acceleration, modern speed, modern handling characteristics, modern chassis dynamics. My choice is always going to be, for this car, give me the 6-speed manual and save 30 or 40 grand on the options. Go light on the options. This car also has the bucket seats, $13,000 carbon package, the carbon roof, again, the carbon ceramic brakes, which, well, they're incredible performers. I'm just not sure if it was my money, how I'd be spending it would be on the carbon ceramic brakes. I didn't talk too much about the technology in the car, but I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with this newest iteration of iDrive until I hopped in the car, but it was just like meeting an old friend. If you're familiar at all with any of the BMW iDrive systems in the past, you will just figure this out right away. Apple CarPlay works great. The car's reasonably comfortable. The car's even practical. I have had numerous people in the back seats of this car, and they have said that they cannot believe the amount of room that is back there. Will you catch me back there? Absolutely not. I have it on very good authority from people just under the 6-foot mark that there's plenty of room in the back seats for adults. So, 2025 BMW M4 Competition, downsides. Truthfully, there's not a lot. I think at $100,000, this car doesn't quite measure up to expectations, and I think you could easily remedy that by switching to a manual transmission car and going pretty light on the options. Ingress and egress is a bit of a bear, getting in and out over and over again, which I've done already a few times this trip. Repeated getting in and getting out is a bit of a nightmare with the side skirts and the carbon fiber bucket seats, which this car has, and my passengers kind of echoed that sentiment as well. This car does have the carbon fiber race bucket seats, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion now, but I think they're wonderful. I think when you are in them, there are a few better seats on the market than these carbon fiber bucket seats. Getting into them and getting out of them is a process, but if you have spent any time behind the wheel of an i8, it will be a process that is somewhat familiar to you, as you do have to basically throw yourself over a bolster. This bolster is on the seat rather than the side sill. My passengers echoed some of my concerns about ingress and egress, but other than that, thought they were also very comfortable once you were in them. Would I spend $3,500 on them? Maybe not. Again, I think this car does its best when it's lightly optioned, but I wouldn't say no to them. I think they're great. I think they look great. I think they feel great. Probably not as a daily driver. Now, the interior ergonomics are a huge step up from where I remember iDrive 8 cars being. It's been a little while since I've driven a car with the in-dash display, and it feels more natural than I remember it being. I'm still not crazy about the gauges. I wish we had a little bit more of a traditional analog tachometer and speedometer, but you do get used to them. The head-up display helps with that too. And then, of course, there's the exterior design, which I'm still not a fan of the front at all, but I might be too close to the source because everyone else I've talked to and introduced to the car with has had nothing but awesome things to say about it. From car enthusiasts, people who know things about cars, have really liked the looks. Lay people who don't know anything about cars say it looks fantastic, it looks really good. The important stuff, which is, how the car feels from the driver's seat, what your landscape looks like as you peer out from behind the driver to the steering wheel, that's good. While it's obviously a far cry from the personality and charm of an E46 M3 gauge cluster, for example, with any sort of pragmatism, you have to be like, okay, those days are gone, everything is digital now, and that's just the way it is. So what are the pros for the 2025 BMW M4 Competition? Well, the car is massively capable. 503 horsepower in this rear-wheel drive model, 523 in the all-wheel drive models. No matter which you choose, you're never going to be wanting for power. The car is always quick. Even when you're not in the full kill Sport Plus modes, it doesn't matter. The car is always ready to go. You've got, especially with the carbon ceramic brakes on this car, you've got great brakes. The chassis is compliant, very dynamic. The car is versatile. I could fit people comfortably in the back seat. I didn't think that they would want to be back there. It turns out there's more room back there than there is in my friend's Audi A3. And BMW also does a really good job of integrating the technology in a way that doesn't impede the driving experience. I was very hesitant and almost reluctant to like iDrive in this car with the giant curved display. Boy, was I wrong. The tech is there for when you need it, but if you don't want to think about it, you pretty much set your driver modes, especially with the M1 and M2 buttons on the M cars. You set them and you do it once, and then you're good to go for the rest of the time you're driving the car. So what are the downsides to the 2025 BMW M4? Well, for one, the car is expensive. This car as tested is $110,000 compared to the base MSRP of around $80,000. I think you could do yourself a huge favor by going light on the option and do the car another big favor by opting for a manual transmission, helping you save a little bit of money too. Which brings me to my second point. The car doesn't always feel as engaging as it could. With a car like the Miata or, an older BMW M vehicle, you're always feeling like it's driver and machine. With this car, the chassis asks very little of its driver. You don't really need to know much about performance driving or driving in general to drive this thing fast. Lastly is design, and that's going to be something that probably splits the audience right down the middle. I'm not crazy about how this car looks. I'd be much happier with something that looks a little bit more traditional. That being said, every person I introduced to the car felt it looked great and aggressive and like a race car, to quote one. The G82 M4 is a lot different from its predecessors. It has a lot of new technology, certainly looks a lot different, and it's much quicker and more capable overall. But in many ways, the ethos of the M3 and M4 has stayed the same even since the E30. It's a wonderful, wonderful street car, and it can take you to the track too. Also, you have to consider the competition. The C63 AMG is powered by a 4-cylinder hybrid, and the interior quality in this far exceeds anything you'll see in the Cadillac CT4V Blackwing or the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. Besides, you can't see the car while you're driving it, and I think you'll be having too much fun to even think about it. Thanks for watching.